thank you all very much. It's a great honor to be in front of the National Association of Letter Carriers at your annual meeting. I must admit there are more people here than I had envisioned. I want to thank the NALC President Frederick Rolando, Executive Vice President Brian Renfro, the Kentucky State President Bob McNulty, and our letter carrier Congressional Liaison Muriel Swift. And a special thanks to all of you Chicago Branch 11 and the members of the National Association of Letter Carriers for the opportunity to speak here today. It's quite an honor. I also want to give a special thank you to Corey Keller. I don't know, back there, stand up, Corey. She does an outstanding job representing you in Washington, D.C. Well, having gotten postal reform through Congress into law, all I can say is that was easy. We should do it more often. But no, I'm just kidding. Over the course of the past 2 years, it's become clear how challenging it is to legislate on postal issues. One thing that I've learned in my short time in Congress, it's pretty easy to identify the different types of congressmen. You have congressmen and a majority of congressmen who actually want to govern, and then you have a minority of members of Congress who just want to disrupt and complain and get on TV and things like that. Fortunately, we found enough members of Congress who wanted to govern in both parties to be able to pass this legislation. But I consider myself fortunate because I came to Congress and I actually wanted to try to govern and do some good things. And I got my chance when I became the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, which has, as you all know, jurisdiction over the Postal Service. It meant a lot to me to work on this bill with you all because the post office is in my blood. My grandmother, her name was Matrid Witcher. She was a rural letter carrier in a small town called Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee, which is right below where I live in Tompkinsville, Kentucky. And I have to tell this story. A few of you have heard me tell it, and I know it breaks every rule, probably broke every rule then, and it definitely breaks every rule now, but I have to say it. I used to go out on the mail route with her. And we didn't know what car seats were or anything like that, but she had a rural mail route, and my fondest memory, and I'm really getting in trouble here, and I'm probably gonna have animal rights activists serve me a subpoena, but we had in this rural area, a lot of people ordered chickens in the mail. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but we would have all these boxes with little holes in it with chickens, and I would shake the boxes, and my grandmother would say, "Stop shaking the chickens." So, but I remember so many times when she would stop at a house, the person would be there and talk to her. You know, the letter carriers are a part of our fabric in America. And it was unique and special to see the relationship that my grandmother had with the people on her route. And I'm sure that you all have those same types of relationships when you're delivering mail. You know, out in the country where I represent, the Postal Service is the link to the rest of the world. You know, when people still relied on rabbit ear antennas or the AM radio, sometimes mail was the only thing that kept you from being truly isolated. And sometimes, especially for the elderly, the visit from the letter carrier was the only human contact that people had all day. Now, that might be hard to envision or remember in this age of instant communications, but it was a real experience for a lot of people, especially in the area where I represent. So it means a great deal to me to play the part in working with you all to pass this legislation. And as I said, it was very hard, and I know that many of you have worked on this for over a decade. Many thought it could not be done, especially in this Congress, which I don't know if you've noticed hasn't accomplished a whole lot in a bipartisan manner. There are always a lot of competing interests, and there was really no business model on how to actually get it done. And there have been many attempts in the past at postal reform, but they all failed to advance through Congress. But rather than look at this as a fool's errand, I embraced the opportunity when Chairwoman Maloney, who is my Democrat counterpart on the committee, but someone whom I have a very close relationship and have a lot of respect for, she asked me to work with her on this, and I greatly accepted her offer because bipartisanship was necessary. But there were other factors that had to fall into place. And one is the enduring value the American people have on the Postal Service. Now, that's not to say there wasn't support for the Postal Service during previous reform attempts. But due to COVID, we all got a reminder just how important it is to all America, how important the Postal Service is. And during the Postal Service, the letter carriers stepped up. When a lot of people didn't work for various reasons, and the government was shut down, mostly, you all never stopped delivering the mail. And I think America realized and appreciated the sacrifice that you all made. You all served as a lifeline to loved ones and friends when face-to-face contact or a firm handshake became off limits. It kept enterprises large and small, the Postal Service, afloat as e-commerce became the primary way of doing business. And often postal workers became literal lifelines, delivering medicines or supplies when trips to the pharmacy were either no longer an option or presented a risk some Americans couldn't afford to take. While COVID presented an extreme situation, the growing importance of e-commerce and package delivery illustrate a newfound reliance on the Postal Service that is here to stay. It also illustrates, however, a shift in the marketplace away from first-class mail to packages. Yet until recently, the Postal Service business model and the laws governing it both assumed first-class mail would remain strong. And we all know that's not the case. So in order for the Postal Service to survive, both the business model and laws need to evolve. The main thing the Postal Service Reform Act did was to clear away requirements that made it impossible to have a fighting chance. But before it passed, Congress was talking out of both sides of its mouth, and I'm sure that comes as no surprise to anyone in here. It said the Postal Service had to operate like a business, yet required it to do things no other business would have to do or could do. The Postal Service Reform Act ended the mandate that the Postal Service pre-fund retiree health benefits. No private business does that. The Postal Service Act also allowed the Postal Service to fully integrate with Medicare. This will ensure postal retirees get the benefits they have earned, but also helps the Postal Service manage its finances. These measures are important, but as I said, there are two pieces to this puzzle. The second piece is reforming the Postal Service's business model. Congress can help create an environment in which the Postal Service can thrive, but it cannot legislate modern and competitive business practices. This falls to the Postal Service leadership and key stakeholders like each of you, the letter carriers. Thankfully, there is now a reform plan, and this was critical in securing Republican support for the Postal Reform Bill. One of the reasons past reform efforts never got off the ground was that they centered on cutting services, fewer delivery days, and closing post offices. The plan Postmaster General DeJoy has developed involves expanding services, and being competitive. And he wants to keep delivering 6, even 7 days a week. Now, prior to coming on the stage, I called Postmaster DeJoy because he and I worked together a lot on this legislation along with your legislative team up here. And you know, Postmaster DeJoy was vilified by people in both parties for wanting to make some changes, but one thing that I noticed about Postmaster DeJoy is he really tried to get input from all the stakeholders, especially the letter carriers and the other postal unions. And I told him I was speaking today, and he asked that I mention a few things to you all. He said that he, along with the Postal Board of Governors, I know you had one speak here yesterday, are working on stabilizing the workforce, and I heard that as an issue in the debate when I was waiting to come on the stage. He wanted to mention he converted 100,000 part-time employees to full-time status. He's trying to drive out the transportation waste, which was one of the things that he said he could do to cut costs. And he's focused on trying to grow the package delivery business while continuing to serve first-class mail. So I think that one of the challenges in the past to passing postal reform is that it was going to be controversial. It was no way to please everybody, and a lot of the previous postmaster generals didn't come with a plan for reform, but he did, and I'm sure it's not a plan that everybody likes. It's not. There's things in there that I don't like, but you've got to have a plan, and hopefully we can continue to work, because this will evolve. This bill isn't this isn't it. We're going to have to continue to do things and tweak things, and I look forward to working with you all on that. And I intend to conduct oversight of the Postal Service as we move forward to ensure that you all have all the tools you need to be able to continue to be successful. In closing, let me say this. Passing this bill is a real team effort, and you all were part of that team. You lobbied your member of Congress in both the House and the Senate to vote for this bill to make it become law. And as you all know, the Postal Service saw one of the busiest holiday seasons ever this past year. Yet as the White House noted, nearly 99% of consumers received their packages on time or with minimal delays. That beat, that's a big accomplishment. A lot of members of Congress were always trying to compare the Postal Service to UPS and FedEx. You all beat UPS and FedEx in performance this past Christmas. That's a pretty big deal. And that's a big deal because your performance this past Christmas helped us make the case to Congress that the Postal Service is on the right track moving forward. So I just want to thank you for your service to America. As someone who grew up in a postal family, someone who benefited from my grandmother's good job with the Postal Service and the good friends and relationships she made as a letter carrier, I appreciate the sacrifices that you make, and I look forward to working with you in the future. If there's ever anything that we can do to be of any assistance to the letter carriers, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Thank you for the invitation to be here, and I look forward to seeing you in Washington soon. Thank you all.